Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and as you can see, this is a very blank cover, and that's because I actually own a copy of this book, but this copy of the book has a cover that, well, looks like that. So what is the book? Well, we're still in Dr. Dolittle, but this is a side bit. Gub Gub's book, an encyclopedia of food in 20 volumes. Note, Professor Gub Gub announces that owing to the high cost of living, the other 19 volumes of this great work have been temporarily postponed. This is, of course, the title page. This is a side bit, it is explained to us by our good friend Tommy Stubbins, son of Jacob Stubbins, cobbler of Puddle Beyond the Marsh. He basically, as the narrator of the book, decided that he wanted that Gub Gub the Pig had been telling everybody about his encyclopedia, and Tommy, you will remember being Dr. Dolittle's assistant person, decided that he thought that it was interesting enough that he would take down what Gub Gub was intending to write in terms of his in terms of this Encyclopedia of Food. However, this turns out to be not encyclopedic in nature, but instead is merely the story of several different evenings over the course of several months, during which Gub Gub was telling the various animals, Dab Dab, Jip, Whitey the Mouse, and Polynesia, who said very, very little, and of course Tommy, telling them about what he intended to write and what was in his book. And so it's really sort of more just a narration of several evenings of an author discussing the process of writing his book. So let us take a look at this first color plate. Hugh Lofting takes a slightly different drawing style in this book. His normal drawing style is a lot of extremely solid lines and very not shaded things. But this is a deliberately, it's still, artificial in nature. It's not, designed for hyperrealism, but it's much less cartoony than the illustrations he's been doing before, which is interesting, and it gives this book a slightly different look in illustration-wise. This still has the rather stark tendencies to coloration that he has in his other color plates. These very, very solid colors and that stark and unexpected black background. But you can see from how Gub Gub looks in this that it's different. And I'm not sure whether I approve or disapprove of it, but what I can say is his ability to so starkly change his style interestingly leads to the implication that he is actually an even better artist than I had thought, because it indicates that his choices in the other books were very deliberated, rather than merely being the choices of somebody with some good instincts and limited skills. Anyway, so Gub Gub at the start of this book is putting on airs. This is Gub Gub wearing glasses and with a quill pen behind his ear, attempting to look sophisticated and authorly. And he spends a great deal of time in this book attempting to sound sophisticated, but in a lot of ways this book does rehabilitate Gub Gub in terms of his intellect, because he has always to an extent been given us the impression of kind of a dim bulb. It's sort of heavily implied in other books that he's not that bright, but what we really have here is not that he's not bright, but that he is very, very singularly focused. That Gub Gub's focus is food. He's a pig. It's the natural, characteristic that we attribute to pigs. But the big thing is that he's very singularly focused, and so he's got a lot of stuff, a lot of ability to talk and consider things to do with food. Whereas the rest of the time he doesn't know anything about anything, but that's because he is singularly focused on food. He talks about the potato, its discovery. Most people think it was made by Sir Walter Raleigh. Wrong, all wrong. It is true that Sir Walter in 1586 first introduced it to Ireland, where it is still quite the favourite vegetable, known under the various names of spud, pratie, patata, etc. But Raleigh wasn't the first to discover it. He only brought it over from the Carolinas and had it grown on his estates in Cork, and very soon the Cork potato spread over the rest of Ireland. And I haven't actually done the research, but I would suspect that might actually be true, given the nature of how potatoes did make their way over from the New World to the Old. And there's the bit where, then take the parsnip, that queen of all vegetables, known in botany as Pastinaca sativa. It is found in the wild state on the roadsides of England and throughout Europe and temperate Asia. It has been cultivated since the times of the Romans, being as it is part of the natural order of Umbelliferae. It was always... And he's like this. It's a singular focus of somebody who knows a topic. He just doesn't know or care about anything else. He does, of course, know about famous other pigs, such as Patricia Portley, the Venus of the Berkshires. Which this is possibly my favorite illustration in this whole book. I love this seductive pig lady. So the book continues with him talking about, a lot of these things that he has in here are in fact just wholly made up, such as the, yes, we don't call them Eskimos anymore, but in this book it's called Eskimo, who was invited down south to meet the Governor General of Canada and had to eat hot soup and invented a soup thermometer where he got a bath thermometer which he used in order to make sure that the soup was the appropriate temperature for drinking, which I think actually, let's be honest, a lot of us could use. And Gub Gub he talks about a man who decided to use ginger snaps to tell how damp the weather was, and a variety of other things. And of course he dug up the old stone soup story, the story of the traveling soldier and a housewife doesn't want to feed him, so he tells her he's going to make stone soup, and what he does is, put some stones into water and then tells her, well, if you could give me some salt and pepper and an onion would help, and oh yes, if you could add this bit of vegetable and that, it would just add a little bit to the soup, and a ham bone to give a body, and by the time he's finished constructing his soup, he's constructed a proper soup, and there's just some stones at the bottom of it, and he gets away with making food. Which, that's a story that we've heard in a dozen different places. There is also Sherbet Scones, the Icebox Detective, who is something of a parody of Sherlock Holmes. Not a particularly specific or excellent parody, but nonetheless is invoking the spirit of Sherlock Holmes in a sort of a distant way, as Gub Gub tells us his detective story. And so you have these various these various things which are ostensibly histories. I mean, most of it is fiction, although I suspect there is a soupçon of genuine fact flavored into this, dropped into this book for flavor. But Gub Gub's final chapter, The Eighth Evening, is the final couple of chapters, rather, this final section of the book, is Gub Gub telling a story. It's sort of an invented, an invented tale that Gub Gub had decided to sort of throw on at the end because he had been inspired by, being out one day. And the delight of this is King Guzzle the Second is described as the man who inherited the throne from his father, who was a warmonger, and then King Guzzle decided that he was going to, instead of going to war and invading a whole bunch of other countries to add to the treasury, he was going to spend the money in the treasury. And his spending money in the treasury attracted people to come, and the whole country got wealthier because they had so much trade happening. But the highlight of the story kicks in, for me at least, when Gub Gub talks about his great picnic that King Guzzle had invited dozens and dozens of dignitaries to, and he just winds up with 1,000,001 names that he has just translated into being foodie names, as he talks about the Queen of Blenheim Orange with her daughter, Princess Mignonette of Marjoram and Rue. And, the many other kings and queens flocked from east and south and west and north, and important ambassadors were sent. Example, Bellini Anchovy, dictator of the Republic of Rhubarb, had revolution on his hands, but his uncle Don Castro Castor Oil came in his stead. And talking about the great knights who were invited, Sir Lancelot Lollipop, famous rescuer of distressed damsons, the Dutch naturalist Viscount van Veel, whose work on vegetable botany had caused such a stir, Conrad, Earl of the Marshmallows, Gumbo Goulash of Budapest, whose Danube dairy supplied the finest butter in the world, Sir Cinnamon Bun, the Countess of Curd, who had given her whole life to cream cheese. It keeps on going for quite a while. It's delightful, and strange, and it's such a charming piece. Just these moments when Hugh Lofting just decides to go for broke and invent things whole hog and have a wonderful time just going over the edge. And I grant that there is a lot in these books which is problematic by current standards. You may not want to give these books to kids because you don't want to accidentally teach them the wrong lessons about how to address people, but at the same time, I feel like we're losing something by losing these books, and I can't help but think that if somebody could find a way to create selections or edit them down, something to ensure that they don't get lost completely, because this is just charming and fun and ridiculous and over the top, and I delight in, the story of King Guzzle II, who is king of a country that effectively elects their kings, and he told them that perhaps they should just make themselves into a republic rather than a kingdom, and that the task he had set out to do, that he had taught his people the true values of things worthwhile in living, and so he retires to just quietly live out his life. I adore this book, and I'm glad that I own it. And I'm going to stop talking about it because I'm basically at the end of my self-appointed time, so that is everything, and I will see you all next week.